Hello, my name is Beth Dixon, and this is a video series on the types of sampling. This is the second video in the series. In the previous video, we talked about simple random samples and systematic samples. In this video, we'll start by talking about stratified samples. And stratified samples are one of two samples that involves groups. The first step in a stratified sample is to break the population into logical groups called strata. And step two is to randomly select some members from each group. Taking a stratified sample of 4 from each airport. Notice that our data is in some logical groups just as we look. That is the first requirement for a stratified sample, is to put them into groups. So step 1 is to define the groups. In this case, each airport will be our group. Step 2 is to take a random sample from each airport. We do this individually and just like each airport was a different population. So we'll number the Russet City Airport and number the aircraft in the first airport. There are 10 aircraft, so we'll use random integer 1 through 10 and repeat the process to get and select 4 of the aircraft. Then we have Jasonville Airport. Number the aircraft there. There are 8 aircraft. Use random integer 1 through 8. And again select 4 of their aircraft. Go to Chasentown Airport. There are 11 aircraft, random integer 1 through 11, 1, 11. Select 4, circle those, and then go to Melzenville Airport 1 through 9, random integer 1, 9, and select 4 aircraft from there. Notice that we ignored the repeat numbers as we took our sample. If you do this along with us on your calculator, your sample will be different. Every time you take a random sample, you could get a different answer. And this is a stratified sample of 4 from each airport. And the circled aircraft make up our sample. Our last type of sample is a cluster sample. It again involves groups. Step 1 is still to break up the population into logical groups. In this case, step 2 is to randomly select some of the groups and then to sample. The sample will consist of all of the members of the selected groups. Let's go back to our airports. Step 1, the groups will be the 4 airports just like before. But this time we'll number the airports, not the aircraft. Next, we have 4 numbers here, so let's just randomly select 2 airports. The sample will consist of all the members of those 2 airports. Random integer 1 through 4, since there are 4 airports, and we randomly select 2, and we'll then, since in this case, since we got airport 3, we'll circle all the aircraft in group 3, the Chasentown Airport, and group 2, Jasonville Airport. And again, the circled aircraft make up our sample, all of the aircraft in Jasonville and Chasentown. Here is one for you to try. Pause if you wish to complete it. Here's another one for cluster. We need to be able to identify which type of sampling someone else used in their study. Identify each of the following as a simple random sample, a systematic sample, a cluster sample, or a stratified sample. A company receives 36 boxes of pens. 19 of these boxes are randomly selected, and every pen in each selected box is checked to see if it works properly. This would be a cluster. Now, how do I keep cluster straight from stratified? Well, both of those involve groups. So that's how I keep it straight from a simple random sample and a systematic sample. And this one has pens in boxes, so that's a group of pens. When I think of the word cluster, I think of Honey Nut Clusters and the old commercial they used to have about the clusters. Now, the commercial is not important, but I think about how you would eat or take that cluster. You wouldn't divide it into pieces. You would take the whole cluster and not part of it. When you have a cluster of grapes, you don't buy individual grapes, you buy the cluster of grapes. So, in a cluster of sample, your sample involves the whole group, not part of the group. So when this one says every pen in each selected box is checked to see if it works properly, I've not divided it up, therefore it's a cluster. Let's read this example. Again, identify the following as a simple random sample, a systematic sample, a cluster sample, or a stratified sample. A rental car company has a fleet of 78 cars. 15 of the cars from the fleet are randomly selected and their mileage is recorded. There are no groups involved, so this would be a simple random sample. A large dairy corporation has dairy farms throughout the state. A state inspector randomly selects 10 cows from every farm and takes a blood sample from each of these cows. Notice the cows are the population, but we aren't randomly selecting from every cow. The cows are grouped into farms, and because we're into groups, it must either be a cluster or a stratified. In a cluster sample, we would sample every cow on a farm. Think the cereal or the grapes. Since this isn't what's happening, it must be stratified. And although stratified as a word isn't associated or close to a buffet, that's how I think of stratified. I think of Sunday dinner on the grounds, if you know about those, or a buffet dinner. You go down the table and you select a little from every dish that's offered to you. In our case, 10 cows from every farm. I hope the two visuals here have helped you keep the two straight between stratified and cluster. Let's look at this example. Every 11th person entering the ballpark is given a gift certificate for a free drink. This one is systematic. Why? Because it's picking every 11th person, which is a formula or a pattern to follow. Therefore, there's a system. Therefore, systematic. Here are some more examples for you to look at. Pause the video if you would like to work these. And another page as well. And one last page. Well, not the last page, it says continued. Here's the last page. Thank you for watching. My name again is Beth Dixon, and if you'd like the answers to those, just contact me or email me at beth.dixon@ws.edu.